My name is Sujit Mohanty. I'm our General Manager for Public Sector Field Engineering. Can I just get a round of applause for such an amazing event so far? I think we got another 48 hours of content here at Data AI Summit. I know everybody's pumped, and we want to make sure we give you guys the best and most perfect content that we have here for public sector over the next 3 hours that we have everybody together here. So what to expect here at Data AI Summit? I mean, you're already experiencing some of this already, and you'll continue to experience this over the next few days. But we have public sector sessions, 16 customer sessions, 30 public sector speakers. And during this next 3 hours, you're going to hear directly from our customers. They're going to be talking about modernization, legacy migration, Unity catalog, data sharing, GenAI security. We have a dedicated public sector networking area on the show floor, industry dinners, happy hours. It's going to be a fantastic time for you to collaborate, have deep conversations, and learn what's happening in our space. And then from an industry solutions hub perspective, there's demonstrations, whiteboard, solution sessions, technical experts, and demos around LLM RAG chatbots. We have a Navy planned and predictive maintenance demo, and also a public health GenAI demonstration as well too. We want to thank our industry sponsors, particularly for this session. We want to thank AWS for being our industry sponsor here. And really just to kind of kick things off, I think most folks are familiar with Databricks, but some folks aren't familiar with our presence here in the federal market. Databricks Federal has been really a key piece of the public sector since 2018. We have more than 150 customers across federal, state, and local, all the different branches, DOD, civilian. And we also have a very large ISV ecosystem that services the public sector as well too. So our end customer agencies being able to take the best and brightest of commercial vendors that are building on top of Databricks as well. We're a recognized leader by industry analysts, everybody from Gartner, Forrester, multiple different categories, from database management systems, data science and ML platforms, AI foundation models as well too. And those will be talked a little bit further as we go forward with the keynote sessions tomorrow and Thursday. But then the other aspect too is touching user populations like the DOD. We have 10,000 customers globally in every DOD service branch touching a Databricks instantiation. So the scale is something that you're going to hear today is very, very impactful. And our SLED customers are also leading the way as well across education, state government, local government, state of California, state of New York, really large scale organizations that are leveraging Databricks for innovation. And so a couple key announcements we wanted to talk a little bit about. So we have a new SaaS offering. So it's Databricks on AWS GovCloud. So that's the Databricks Intelligence Platform, being able to have that for highly sensitive, unclassified workloads. And so that's currently in public preview and has an agency ATO today. And so that's a key capability. I think we just get a round of applause for that. I think it's a big technical innovation that we're bringing to the market from a SaaS perspective. So currently in public preview, ATO'd in April 2024. Features including, as our customers want, DB SQL, Unity catalog, fully hosted AWS GovCloud, US citizens, US soil, fully ITAR compliant. And then we have several upcoming authorizations and certifications. FedRAMP High, which is going to be announced for GA here coming up in July. And there'll be another session I'll talk about here that will go a little bit deeper on our security compliance. We've got DOD IL5 for E2 SaaS, imminent as well too in that timetable. And then we also have HIPAA, all the different SOC and ISO compliances as well. So there's actually going to be another session that's happening right now during this session, but a repeat of this. But for folks, in our space, security is first and foremost. It's very, very key. So enterprise-grade security compliance on the Databricks Intelligence Platform. Filippo Saracini will be driving this particular session tomorrow from 4 to 4:40. So recommend you guys try to catch that if you have any interest further on these topics. And so a quick overview of the agenda. We're going to be going through with DOD CDAO, the Chief Digital and AI Office. And so that'll be Alex O'Toole and Cody Ferguson from CDAO, walking through their journey, walking through the Advana platform. And then at 2:20, we're going to have data as a strategic asset in state and local. So that'll be an excellent panel of Majida, Bill, and John Ohanian from State of California HHS. and that'll be moderated by Cheryl Miles. And then we'll also talk a little bit about GenAI, and so talking about security, and so balancing AI outcomes with security, governance, responsible AI. Jennifer Storm from US Department of State and Omar Khawaja, our CSO for Databricks, will be moderating that fireside chat. We'll have a quick break at 3:15, and then we'll roll quickly into another panel, data modernization in the era of AI. And so that will be with Ethan Chen and Joe Diorio from Department of Veterans Affairs, and that'll be moderated by Brian Davis. And then we'll have USCIS, so they'll be discussing their migration from PVC to E2, which is a really big thing our customers are experiencing, and really trying to drive capabilities with UC and all the capabilities of the platform. So Shawn and Puru will walk through that journey and the outcomes that they've been able to achieve by going through that. And then at 4:30, Jude Boyle, our VP of Public Sector, is gonna walk through some public sector awards. So looking forward to the next 3 hours. And if you give me a round of applause, I want to welcome Alex O'Toole and Cody Ferguson from CDAO, our first speakers.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. We get to see our slides. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Alex O'Toole. I am the Advana program manager, and I lead our infrastructure and platforms division at CDAO. First off, thank you all for having us speak here.
And my name's Cody Ferguson. I lead up our data and AI tools and services division within the CDAO. This is actually my third time being here, third or fourth at this point. Always an awesome event. Hopefully everybody's enjoying it as much as we are. I think we're gonna immediately jump into like why the complexity of the DoD, or how complex it is and why it's such a challenge for us to solve at the scale that we're working at. And then we're gonna jump back to the kind of the journey and the evolution of Advana and where it's going here in the near future. So this slide didn't really occur to me how how adversarial this might seem until we were in our product advisory board yesterday, and I think there was representation from probably 90% of these companies there. But this is a really quick way to actually explain just why the mission of the Department of Defense is so complex and so big. As you can see, these numbers kind of speak for themselves, but we have huge logistics and supply chain challenges. We have huge financial and asset tracking challenges across all of our services. Obviously with COVID, we saw some of the challenges with medical and medical equipment there. But this is a great slide to kind of level set the problems that we're facing within the Department of Defense.
Yeah. So what we did essentially to solve this problem is, or what we did was essentially create a platform of Advana to start bringing data together. We started actually with the infrastructure and cloud teams to start building a foundation, start putting guardrails, start bringing in tools for us to integrate and bring in data together. And then we started adding in the data governance teams, the cataloging teams, quality teams, to start pushing out quality data to DoD. And providing some of those scaffolding tools and or tool sets for us to give people a head start, so we weren't maintaining or building multiple data science platforms. And then we started essentially federating that out to our customers. Where we aren't the only ones building anymore, it is a lot of our customers either building where we still build the marquee products for the joint warfighter. But then we have essentially our customers from the community spaces, which are essentially many instances of Advana for Navy or for Air Force. We have all the combatant commands, all of our business areas, building products inside of Advana and sharing those among each other and breaking down some of those silos. And totaling over essentially bringing in over 500 data sets, creating over 300 product lines, and serving over 100,000 users inside of the department right now.
That was a big milestone for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To do that, we've brought in a number of tools. Right now, we're on the Databricks PVC version, obviously evaluating E2 and the migration there, which will be coming ideally quickly, but using it largely for ETL processing, a lot of machine learning algorithms being built.
Data federation.
Data federation.
We have a unique challenge in the Department of Defense where we also operate across 3 different classification environments. So we have to have cross-domain solutions in place to be able to move data back and forth to the necessary classification level as well.
And so when we take a look now that we kind of explained a bit of where we started from, we started as a single platform, really designed around audit, bringing in financial data, aggregating financial data, standardizing it, and preparing for the audit, till we moved into where we are now of supporting combatant commands, starting to move into that self-service and supporting multi-domain operations, and starting to really empower federated builders and moving away from the white glove self-service. And then we look towards the future of really beginning a full, true self-service model, really beginning to build through GitOps and reusable code of starting to push out the platform to customers and providing the data layer or enterprise data service. And so that's what we're going to talk about more today, of essentially where we are today, some of the values we've seen over the last year, and then really the future of where we're going.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so quite a long timeline here of our history. I think dating back to some policy back from probably before I was born, actually. But ultimately, what we set out to initially solve, to Alex's point, is this massive problem that the Department of Defense and other federal agencies have a challenge with, which is simply tying the financial transactions back to the line items on your financial statements. Really, it's actually a requirement for any public entity to be publicly traded. But that requirement didn't really hit the federal government until I think in the 90s at some point. And so because we have well over 30 different accounting systems and 50 different feeder systems into those accounting systems within the Department of Defense, that was a huge challenge for us. But it was actually where we showed a lot of our initial success in developing a semantic layer to sit on top of all of that data and bringing it into a centralized data warehouse, data lake, and then starting to do some of those reconciliations. And so that had been a huge success for us at that point in time. That quickly translated into, great, if you can do this for financial data, can you tell us where all our people are? Can you tell us the status of our tanks and airplanes and where they're at, what the current mission capable rates are for any particular unit? Things like that became immediate requirements from the Deputy Secretary of Defense and the chairman. And at that point in time, I think was when we also started to support COVID tracking, which we're going to jump into some of the other use cases, so I won't go into too much detail there just yet. We'll save that for the end. But there was quite a journey here, and we actually were initially aligned to Comptroller, which is our financial organization within the Department of Defense. We started to support these business health metrics for the Deputy Secretary to get away from PowerPoint presentations of the current status of these various business areas in the department and move towards automated dashboards based on the underlying source system data. And that was massively successful. In fact, 2 years ago, we were realigned with a couple of other organizations to the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office to ultimately accelerate some of our efforts. So that's really where we are today.
Yeah, and what's helped us get here or get to where we are is a couple of our foundational pillars and pillars that we're maintaining over the next few years. But but staples around making sure that anything in Advana is government-owned, government-secured, that we do have essentially government representation in the loop, and that we aren't just sending it off to any one vendor or any one contractor. That we are working with customers and adding in capabilities that they're requesting through our monthly iteration meetings with them, working at more of a scaled agile framework. So as new things coming on, we can pivot quickly and meet the requirements as required. And then really building that open architecture and making sure that anything we are building is open to the government, is open to be shared across the government. Any data products are available for federation and shared within any product, not just one or two tools. And then really making sure we're providing that lineage through through our foundation of audit and the lineage of making sure we're providing a single source of truth for any data set, for any dashboard being developed and built, and then really making sure that we're adding in tool sets for the warfighter. So we're not building in just AI tools or just coding tools, that we're adding in full suite capability, that we're adding in auto AI ML, that we're bringing in tools that are more designed for an analyst and things like that. So as we kind of continue going forward, a big focus is expanding the capabilities of every analyst.
Which is also somewhat of a recruiting strategy for us as well, if you think about it. The folks that actually have the expertise to do these things don't want to work in legacy technology. Shocker, I know. So by bringing in these newer industry accepted capabilities, we're also able to show the newer generation that a career in federal service isn't so bad. We actually get to do some fun stuff. We were just in Germany last week, and we're here at Databricks today. So it's for us, it's been massively successful. Just not just from an architecture and how we do business change, but also from a cultural shift within the department.
Yeah, and so two of our customers, as we mentioned, we had community spaces working with us and community spaces deploying and building. So two we wanted to especially highlight of the value that we're seeing of moving outside of us providing white glove service and starting to federate that out to the customers, which we have 10 as of now, but two highlighting is Jupiter, which is the Navy's extension of Advana, where they have almost, I believe it's 10,000 developers and customers working inside the platform day to day, building applications. I think there are over 300 products now or being built in there using over 100 data sources from Navy that's been ingested and standardizing, to even doing close to real-time replication of their ERP system and bringing that into Advana for a near real-time status of funds and what they have. And then our Air Force community, or the Blade A4 team, working to really modernize and bring up some of their systems, developing and migrating essentially some of the architecture systems that we have and bringing them to a more modern and open architecture.
Skip ahead a little bit.
Yeah, there we go. And then there's 4 big use cases we wanted to share, bring out of where Advana has been working and going over the last couple of years. So the first one is our improper pay. So started in the audit, obviously, but really analyzing all of DoD's transactions, identifying risky or potentially improper charges, flagging those for the analyst over at DFAST, and then being able to recoup those costs. So over the last 2 years, being able to recoup almost $13 billion worth of money is a big flagship for our financial team.
If that were taxes, we'd actually get a cut of that. No, that's a massive. I'm actually just excited we can even share these with you this year. I know in the past, while we were working these day in and day out, there was a little bit of sensitivity to actually even sharing them to the general audience here. So this is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and next, obviously, COVID when everyone shut down, we did not. We kept working. We had military members that still had to be reporting to duty, still had to be moving in and out of their locations. So we stood up essentially a COVID tasking workforce, bring in all the logistics data, all the PPE data, all the supply chain data, all of our HR and personnel data to start tracking our members and our service members throughout our enterprise, and making sure we were advising properly of where we needed to implement additional restrictions or where we could return to work.
Yeah, no, that one didn't prevent us from going into work, unfortunately, but it was a great use case for us because it was really pushed us outside of that financial business area to move into logistics and supporting the warfighter. So it was really one of our first use cases where we got outside of our comfort zone a little bit and showed some massive success based on the underlying architecture we had in place.
Yeah, and then the next one was really our first, one of our first times into real operational, working with our members more closely, but really the Afghan NEO of bringing in essentially emails and PDFs of essentially our partners and that were requesting assistance, being able to help advise and make sure we were connecting those partners to the right people, being able to do pass information along for logistics and for supply. So as we started moving them out of Afghanistan, we were able to make sure the bases had the necessary supplies that we needed, the COVID shots, so the PPE, it all tied together, but making sure we were able to start evaluating and pre-staging supplies there was a big one for our logistics and Afghan support teams.
Yeah, and that one was particularly challenging because getting out of Afghanistan was all military flights, but then once those flights landed in other countries, we then used contracted flights through commercial airlines. And so legitimately at one point we were watching some of our service members track these flights from Flight Tracker on an Excel spreadsheet and providing the status of when and where they landed to the chairman. And we were like, hold on, we can actually automate this for you guys. Why are we doing this? We can tell you exactly when those flights landed, put it in a dashboard. We can actually track the flights in real time and then get the manifests of who's on those flights and bounce those against, particularly if those folks who are coming back stateside, bounce those against terrorist watch lists and other things to make sure that we weren't introducing any additional risk stateside. So that was a huge challenge for us.
Yeah, and the last one is the Ukrainian crisis of being able to, one, have all the logistics data, have all the readiness data, being able to see inside of our supply chain to advise essentially where we have munitions or where we have capabilities that can be transferred, and really being able to aggregate those, recommend those up to be transferred, and then the financial tracking behind it to actually report back to Congress what we are transferring, the cost of it to replace, and what's needed for our partners there to continue fighting, I think is a big one for us.
Yeah, and this one in particular, I think, has pushed us even further into some complexities that we didn't have to deal with in some of these other use cases, where we are now working with nations that are not part of NATO, not formal allies or partners. And so that introduces some additional risk as it pertains to the data that we share, but additional challenges in terms of how they access the data that they can see.
Yeah, so as we kind of build off our experiences and where we go with what we've learned, where the data we brought in is really now beginning that pivot of Advana and changing the way that we do business operations. In the traditional, we've usually we're bringing in the data, we're providing the tool set, and we're we're essentially building algorithms or we're building dashboards on top of it in a very white glove service where we're bringing in contractors and developing, or our community spaces are bringing in contractors and developing on the platform. As we've matured and as we've gotten to a point where we started to hit kind of critical mass, it's been a time for us to really examine and reevaluate the platform and its direction. And really we've come to the conclusion, and after working with a lot of our partners, that building a more open framework and building one where we release some of the control out to the services and out to our combatant commands and partners is really important for us. So over the last essentially year, our team's been working very hard at building essentially a software pipeline, a container hardening pipeline, a model hardening pipeline, essentially an infrastructure pipeline, so we can allow essentially development on IL2 from essentially any partner that then can integrate their tools or their services into the platform and then deploy out through essentially IL5, IL6, and IL7 from the low side using just our core team to facilitate the deployments on the higher side. And then we are also working with some of the more open, our other platforms in DOD and some outside of DOD to start integrating in. So instead of us like forcing or having data migrate to us, being able to serve them the data directly. So the investments you've already made or the department's already made in platforms can continue. And we can just serve the data in a standard way with DOD, with standard attributes, with standard governance models, but really started to accelerate some of the development. And how we're doing it is we started at essentially the infrastructure level. We started with the clouds of building, essentially abstracting the networks, abstracting the clouds, and abstracting the domains. So we built what we called as the platform factory, and we've started to abstract and allow those pipelines and create essentially a standard Advana core. And then building the enterprise data services. So really concentrating, I think we've put out a lot on open data frameworks and data mesh concepts, but really working to create those API gateways, create the governance models to start ingesting and pushing data and federating data out to the other systems. And then taking all of the infrastructure that we showed in the original slide and all the tools and building essentially a common Advana that's a push button deploy so it can be deployed out with all of the governance models, with all the security controls at will. And then where we started to allow customers sandboxes to deploy their web applications, their custom tools, their COTS products, and any models. Being able to deploy into the essentially the factory, integrating in, building out their tools, and then pushing those through the environment without the assistance of our team, but making it much more of a service model in a marketplace so we can expand the offerings and tool sets inside of the platform.
So I think we have 2 slides left, and I don't want to spend all the time on them if there are questions in the room, because we only have 8 minutes. So these are just some quick facts about the amount of data and the data processing we're doing in the platform and some other key metrics. It's probably a bit old at this point, but a massive amount of data, a ton that's being pushed through across domain. Even more actually being federated outside of the platform than is actually coming in at this point, which is kind of a myth that we hear quite often in the department. But if you want to go to the next slide, this just kind of drives home the point of where we're heading on the data and AI front in alignment with this new 1.2 operating model for our data. In particular, very much the same approach to deploying software. Have a pipeline that can actually federate out the ability to make data connections, bring your data in, ETL it, make it available through an API endpoint, and serve it in a model if needed, or inference it in a model if needed. So that's really where we're headed with the data and AI portion of the tech stack. And with that, we have 7 minutes, so I'm sure you guys have questions. Got one over here, and then we'll go to you next.
Previous slides, you had a stack diagram that talked about mission stack. Could you please elaborate what comprises that mission stack, please? Right there, yeah.
Yeah, so
Give us some
inside
example.
of essentially what we build, or if you look at the mission stack, that is going to be largely essentially our core products. So if you look at Databricks being part of the engine and driving that, you look at some of the BI tools of Click and Tableau, but it's also going to include a lot of the governance tools of Amuda, of Calibra, of tools that we would deploy kind of more closer to you, that we would control essentially the operations and governance of the platform in a common way that you would build on top of and integrate your tool sets into.
Talk about how'd you get everyone to share their data? Yeah. I mean, we can all relate in government how difficult that is, right? Did you have a command on high that says "Thou shalt share," or how did that work?
Oh man, those were some of the most stressful days of my career. I think about 3 or 4 years ago now, the Deputy Secretary of Defense came out with a memo called the Creating Data Advantage Memo, which actually directed the entire department to start sharing their data, not just with Advana, although it also identified Advana as the authoritative data platform for the department. But really what that kind of started was when we started the business health metrics and measuring like the actual health of the department's operations, all of it was fed off of spreadsheets because it was going into PowerPoints. By the time it got in front of the deputy secretary or any other leader, it was probably 30 days old. And then they had a question which went back through like 1,000 hours of staffing, and only for that data to come back up and be stale again by the time they answered that question for the deputy. So we started with about a list of about 200 different data sources that were feeding those business decisions. And my task was to get access to every single one of them. And if I was having challenges, whether it was cultural, policy, or resourcing, or otherwise, that went on a list that the deputy secretary would review every single week. And that, at that point, I think, started to remove a lot of blockers for us, which was great, but also created a massive workload for me and my team, which was fairly small at that point in time. And then really, I think after we got through maybe like the first 50, people stopped fighting us, and they realized the value of it, and it really did shift the entire culture of the department, I think. Question in the back?
So you have more than 500 data sources across domains, one of the slides said. How did you solve the semantic problems, right? Because you'll have things that have the same name in different domains, but they're different things. Within one domain, you'll have something that's the same thing in the real world, but it's defined 7 different ways in 7 different data sets.
Yeah.
So I assume you have some kind of semantic layer or incredibly good data catalog with a business glossary. Like, what do you use, and how did you make it?
To be quite honest, we still aren't as successful as we'd like to be in that area, and I meant to say this up front. We have 550 data sources now, but there's actually over 4,000 business systems in the Department of Defense, and that's not even including like our weapons platform. So we've only cracked a small portion of the overall department. But the semantic layer, I mean, the first example I have is what we did for audit, right? Because we were getting data from Oracle databases, COBOL mainframes, SAP data sources, all in different languages. SAP is actually in German. We found that out through the process. And we had to map those to that semantic layer, which was specific to financial data at that point in time and the data that was necessary to actually do the reconciliations to the financial statements. So we started building the business logic on top of every single one of those systems to translate the data into a format that actually allowed us to aggregate all 50 to 80 of those systems into a single place. But we haven't done that for all of our logistics just yet. We've started all of our logistics and supply chain systems. We just kind of started an effort on that. We haven't done it for all of our personnel systems. It's an incredibly hard problem to solve.
Hi, my name's
Hi.
Emily. I'm with ACI. Question, follow up from the data sources. So if we were to bring in commercial data sources, how would that directive work with it? Because the commercial data sources, from what we're finding, are all saying, well, if we're all going to connect into Advana, then how is that going to work if we're selling to these 15 different people now, but you're going to connect in?
Yeah. I don't want to like dance around it. I mean, the government and the DOD in particular buys a lot of the same data sources over and over and over again, and we don't even realize it because Air Force isn't talking to Army, for instance. And that is one of the challenges that Advana was set out to solve on the infrastructure side. So it's obviously something that we want to try to solve on the commercially available data side in that environment. But we haven't just yet. I mean, we bring in a ton of commercially available data, and obviously it's vendor to vendor. It varies on how broadly we can actually share that data.
I think this will be the last one for time.
This is really awesome. Kudos to all of you. A couple of questions, really fast answers. Number one, do you consider data fabric, and how would you compare it with data meshes? And second, are you considering GenAI for the self-service part?
Yeah, data fabric and data mesh. I think like they're incredibly important. The Air Force has a data fabric which consists of like 6 different platforms, I believe, 6 or 7 at this point. I view them as complementary to one another, really. The data fabric really just being a bunch of systems that make up a portion of that data mesh. But I don't know. I think everybody's definition changes on those 2 particular items. And I think they're incredibly useful terms to actually move the Department of Defense into where it needs to go in terms of data sharing and federation. But I'm not necessarily tied to them as concepts.
Yeah, and as far as the LLMs and generative AI, so we do have obviously pipelines now to bring in foundational models, bring them in and sandbox them off inside of the environment. And we have started allowing essentially the self-service users to experiment, to learn, and to train and fine-tune these for certain use cases. I think we're still a little ways away from releasing these into production and allowing these to go until we can really verify the accuracy and traceability inside these models. I think we're going to be a little bit away, but we are certainly open to letting users experiment, letting our customers start learning by doing, just holding off from making decisions off of them.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it, guys. So for our next session, I'd like to welcome Majida, Bill Kehoe, John Ohanian, and our distinguished moderator, Cheryl Miles from Databricks. And it's going to be a focus on data as a strategic asset in state and local government.
Thank you, Sue. Oh, I can't see it here. They just gave us.
And then, what? Aren't you?
I was a little bit going to try to bail on these tall chairs.
up there? It's going to work.
I think if my goal is not to fall off the chair, I'll just say that. Be careful. I'm good. Thank you. Well, everybody, it's really great to see you here today. I'm Cheryl Miles, and I'm really honored to welcome our leaders from state and local government here today. They're going to share their journey towards developing data as a strategic asset. And I want to say that, you know, for those of you who work in government or work with government or work for government, change is really hard, especially, I think, in government. Like government processes and organizations are, by design, not made to be nimble. So it takes a lot of energy to move forward these new initiatives. So I'm really pleased to provide these leaders an opportunity to share with you a bit of their journey. So let's start by asking you to introduce yourselves, tell us what your role is, and what you've done with Databricks. And we're going to start with John.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's John Ohanian. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the California Health and Human Service Agency, and I'm the Director for the Center for Data Insights and Innovation. I started with the state about 4 years ago. I'll give a little of my data journey in a little bit later, but joined the state in May of 2020, which you might remember as the early days of COVID. Started with the state, moved up to Sacramento, and my job starting at the state was to be the first chief data officer, define the role for the office for the secretary, and then to create a startup within the state. And the startup was called the Center for Data Insights and Innovation. We launched it about 3 years ago. And its goal is two-pronged. Number one is how do we, like this prior session, which I can't wait to talk to them a little bit afterwards, is how do we take the 44,000 employees that we have at the California Health and Human Service Agency, the $500 billion in programs that we give out, and become more data-centric when it comes to decision-making, especially in times of budget, which we're experiencing right now. And then the primary focus is we've all received services before, and it's very confusing when you speak to one person one day and the person that you speak to the next day doesn't have your information. We've all been to doctor's offices where you fill out a form and you wonder, why doesn't the next doctor have it? And so we've been challenged with attacking that, and I'll speak about it a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you, John. And Majida, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Majida Adnan. I am the Assistant Auditor-Controller and Chief Information Officer for the Department of Auditor-Controller, County of Los Angeles. LA County, as you know, is one of the biggest county in the United States based on their population. We cater around 10 million residents with a $43 billion budget. The Department of Auditor-Controller plays a vital role in providing leadership and expert advice to the 42 county departments that we have on their financial and business practices. So, and on top of that, we also centrally manage the county's mission-critical and complex ERP system, which includes financials, HR, payroll, budget, procurement, and all the HR personnel stuff. So me as a Chief Information Officer for the department, I'm responsible for not only overseeing the IT strategy and the IT operations of the department, but also to collaborate with multiple departments for a smooth operation of the ERP system for the county.
Terrific. Thank you, Majida. And Bill?
I think there's more that she needs to say.
There's always
And John,
more.
too. Yeah.
We left it for you, Bill.
Yes.
Yes.
So Bill Kehoe, I am the state CIO of the great state of Washington. Anybody from Washington here? All right. A few. And I would say that my data journey started way before the state of Washington. I'll talk a little bit about what we all know that work in government is we collect a lot of data, right? We collect a lot of data. But how much of that data do we use? How much of that data really provides insights into how we are or how we should be improving our services? We do a lot of counting of inputs, very little outcome-based type of analytics, where we're looking at the impact of our services that we provide our residents, and based on that outcome-based analysis, making adjustments to make those services better. That's what we should be doing in government. We're not doing it. And so that's our mission in the state of Washington, is using data to better serve the residents of the state. Collecting data and doing cool things with data is great, but if we're not doing it to improve our services to our residents, then why are we doing it? So that is our focus. And we're just getting started with Databricks and building an enterprise platform and strategy for the state. We've got pockets of Databricks in agencies like health and other human services type agencies. But really what we want to do is bring data together, just like the presentation we just heard, just like John's doing in California, Majida's doing in LA County, bringing that data together and really doing that outcome-based analysis, aggregating the data, looking at how the impact of our services, and then how can we serve our residents in a better way. We have issues like homelessness, poverty, climate change, all of that. We want to use data to look at all of that and then make good decisions on how we can improve those areas. Homelessness is a big issue. Data and data analytics should be all over that in terms of how can we improve, how can we focus our resources in the right areas. So it's a passion of mine and always has been. So I will be quiet now.
Thank you, Bill. I love Bill always has his eye on really what the value, why are we all doing this? And that's for the citizens. So thank you for inspiring us. And while each of your organization and roles are slightly different, I think that your challenges are similar. So including, the complex organizations that you work in, the complex data, even sensitive data that you work with. So Majida, we'll start with you. Where are you in your data modernization journey? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
Before I start on where are we on the journey, I would like to mention how we got onto that journey. So just like Bill mentioned, we have a lot of data. My chief on the data side always says we are rich in data and poor in information. So with supporting all these county-wide applications, we have the entire county's financial data and administrative data, but are we able to answer the questions that come from the board or from any of the programs that we are working on readily available, right? So we can't. I mean, out of the, with this whole data that we currently have, we are producing close to 2,000 reports and outbounds out of data going to different departments. But if the board asks me a specific question to make a decision under a certain program, I most of the time do not have that data readily available, and I have to look into different data sources to dig that in and to combine it to respond back to the board. And I think it just ties to the same challenges that DOD was talking about earlier. And just like Bill mentioned, I'll give that example for homelessness. So if the board asks me, okay, they would like to know how much the county has spent on a particular homeless project and how many hours does the county employees have currently spent on that project, I would have to look into two different data sources to get that information. It's going to be financials, it's going to be HR. Now, if the board gets a little more into it and says, okay, I would also like to know what are the mileage claim requests that come from different departmental users who are actually driving to these homeless sites. Now I have to look into a few more data sources to get that information there. So although we have an integrated ERP system, the databases at the end are pretty siloed and they have their own data warehouses. And that brought us to the entire idea of, in order if we need to expedite or accelerate our data-driven decision-making and foster a culture for using data as a strategic asset, we need to integrate and unify that data together so it's easily available for quick accessibility and availability. as well as manipulation of data whenever we would like to create something out of it. So that kind of was the purpose of our DNA. We call it Data and Analytics Project. That's where we started off with. Again, just because we have a 20-year-old legacy reporting system, it's very near and dear to a lot of people. We have created these reports that are pretty complex and critical for the operations for LA County. So they are very particular to make sure that we do not have any service gaps. So we are approaching this very strategically and tactically. We are, I think, year 2 in Databricks. We started off with phase 0. And phase 0 was very much focused on setting up the foundation. So we used Azure Databricks. We used Databricks Lakehouse for our data workload strategy. We used the medallion architecture for our data governance strategy. And we started off with phase 1. We started bringing in data and started producing results out of starting playing with that data. I think our focus was on 2 major epics. One is the expenditure and budget, and the other one was a 360 on the vendor monitoring. So at this point, we are, we rolled out phase 1. We are strategizing for our following phases on it.
It's so exciting. For those of you who don't know, Los Angeles County, if it were a state, it would be the 8th largest state in the union. So it's larger than most of the states. So this accomplishment is terrific, Majida.
Thank you. It's a teamwork.
And the Los Angeles County team is sitting right here. So congratulations to you all, too. John, can I ask you, I'm sure everybody is interested to learn, where are you in your data modernization journey?
Sure.
And what are some of your lessons learned?
Sure. So I guess I would just step in and say, when I came on board 4 years ago, while there wasn't a chief data officer, we have 14 departments, and some of them had chief data officers, some of them had data officers in particular focused on this journey that we're talking about, right? How do we become more person-centered? So in a way, I'm standing on their shoulders because there was a Secretary of Health prior to the current secretary that he was all in on data. He actually brought all the department directors together and said, we're gonna all sign a data sharing agreement. And it was things like that that I walked into and had the benefit of being able to stand with that agreement and hold people to it. I wanna also just do a quick shout out because our chief data architect's in the room, David Sanabria, and our acting CIO, as well as our deputy director over our hub, Simi Keechlot, is here. And it's because it's a team, we know that, right? I happen to be up here, I'm sharing our story, but we're really fortunate to have this feeling around our agency that we're serving people. And while we operate thousands of programs, and if you think about it, the state doesn't operate a lot of those programs, right? We take money that comes from the feds or from your taxes, and we make investments into counties throughout the state that do the actual program, and we're not, we know that. But we know as a whole, we need to have feedback loops. We need to be better technologically connected with our counties so that vice versa, we can see what's happening at the ground level, and counties might be able to see how they're doing against maybe their peer counties, whether it's larger, smaller, different programs. And so I think it's important to stage the fact that I'm a pretty impatient person. I came from the startup environment, and I've only been at the state for 4 years. And so in some ways, I feel like all I keep looking at is where we need to go and what we haven't done. But I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to do in terms of that relationship building, the trust. We have a hub with Databricks, and to get folks, we don't need all our departments to get on board with Databricks, and not that they shouldn't, or whatnot, but it's not our business in that way. But what it is important to us is that the business intelligence we need on our clients and that the real-time service delivery improves is most important. And so what I like doing is saying, yeah, we have our hub at the agency, and I think it's our job to innovate and incubate better ways to do data governance. How do we all get on all the same data standards so we're all talking about the same data when we're sharing it? I was very jealous of DOD's presentation because while my boss, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, has that very influential title, they still are 14 different departments, 14 different entities receiving federal funds. And while it doesn't sound really sexy or exciting to talk about it, those are the barriers we run into every day. Me on a phone with a privacy attorney trying to say, for the benefit of this person who might experiencing homelessness, it would be great to share their data. Can we find a way in the rules that were probably written way before we even had interoperability, right? And so it really does stem federal laws that need to change. And so we're spending a lot of time on that. So you may look at me and you may not see a data practitioner, but what you see is a data evangelist, someone that needs to simplify the barriers to the secretary, to the governor, to other department directors to get them on board with where we need to go. Because I think a lot of the technical ways to do it is not the issue, right? Technology is not our issue. Resources at the state of California should not be our issue. When we're talking about making decisions of hundreds of billions of dollars, we should be able to invest a few $1 million to do our data work better and things of that. So I'll just add two things and I'll stop. Going forward, where ICS is, I would say middle, be safe. I don't think we're at the far end advanced, and I see a couple of nods from my team, so maybe that's good. We're not at our base level, but it's kind of one of these things that the more you know, the more you realize that you need, the more you realize the journey is to go. And I think that's where we're at. We know that we would like uniform data standards throughout our agency. How to actually accomplish that will take effort. And so the approach that we take is on use cases. So it's funny that you mentioned homelessness. Obviously, you've heard our governor talk about it, our secretary talk about it. There are so many different programs that touch someone who might be experiencing homelessness. There are so many funding streams that they may get a bump for this and a bump for that. Wouldn't it be great if anyone that received dollars that was to support someone experiencing homelessness, either pre, post, or whatnot, they all had to share their data. They all had to coordinate so that if you see Joe, or you see Joe, or I see Joe, we all are connected and we can work more efficiently. And so that's kind of how we're approaching that work.
Thank you,
Hope
John.
that helps.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I've always said if you want to make an impact work for your government, that's how you make an impact on your communities. And for those of you who don't know the size and scale of the state of California, it's the 5th largest economy in the world. So this change is amazing. I thank you, John. Thank you for your leadership. And Bill, I don't know if he said, I know we're moving pretty quickly. And we want to get through this.
It's a countdown.
It's a
Wow.
countdown.
And it just got it faster.
Yeah.
I got things to say.
You got things to say. And I know
Yes.
one of your key things was improving citizen services. So did you want to touch on that some more?
Sure. But I actually want to touch on the former question a little bit too.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you can do
As a
it.
moderator.
You only have like 45
Yeah,
seconds.
okay. So I just want to say something about another aspect of what we do in government is we talk about replacing legacy systems, right? A lot. We don't talk about modernization. And that's a shift that we're seeing in the state of Washington is modernization to us has many components. The customer experience is one big component of that, where we want to start the modernization journey. And then data is a huge part of that, right? So it's not just about replacing old systems, but thinking about it as we're doing that, what is the customer experience? What is the journey maps, that business process change we need to make? What is the data strategy that we need to make? What's the OCM or the change management that we need to have in our organizations? Moving to agile, incremental, phased implementation. All of that we're seeing all of our large enterprise projects. And data has to be a big piece of that. But we tend to forget, as we're talking about replacing old systems, we tend to just replace it with a new system. We don't improve the customer experience. We don't even ask our customers sometimes, what is your experience? I can tell you in Washington, when we ask our customers that, it's like, why do I have to go to 20 different websites to get the information and the services I need? I want to deal with the state. I don't want to memorize your org structure, your acronyms, all that crap. just give me one face of government and let me seamlessly access those services. And so that's what we're after. And it's about modernization. It's about data as a foundation. It's about really understanding the experience of our residents in the state of Washington. And it's diverse, right? We're not designing systems for the few. We're designing systems for everyone in our state. And so it's not just digital experience, it's office experience as well. And so that's a huge focus for us right now, is using data, using Databricks, data analytics to really understand the customer experience. And then as we design and modernize our systems, ensuring that we're making good decisions because we have the data to back that up. Look at that. I mean, I left some time too.
And we only have 6 minutes left, so we're going to jump straight to a quick wrap up here. And so I'm going to do this sort of round robin really quickly. So Majida, we'll ask you first. Is GenAI on the horizon? And what are you thinking about from the power of GenAI?
Well, for GenAI, ready or not, it's here, right? So, and it's expanding exponentially. You know, from a public sector perspective, we are always, we are known to be very cautious, and being Auditor-Controller, we are overly cautious, thinking about security, privacy, and everything. Should we use it? Should we not? We are currently working on the basic fundamentals of moving towards GenAI. So, you know, for the success of any GenAI implementation, the quality of data is integral. It's really important. So we are working on, you know, cleaning up data, data governance, you know, building all those rules, policies, tightening it up, as well as data classification, which is also very important for any GenAI model. So despite being overly cautious, we have spent a lot of time in learning and I would say analyzing and making a decision. So we are excited to start a POC with using, you know, Databricks state-of-the-art DBRX model, which is a retrieval augmented generation LLM. It's a RAG model that we are excited to start a proof of concept on. And what we are doing is we have, again, a wealth of information in unstructured PDFs, and these PDFs could be functional documents, you know, a lot of county fiscal policies and you know, all that. So we are putting that together in an inventory. We are doing it in our private network. So we make sure that we are not doing the World Wide Web on that. And very securely, we are proceeding in that use case. So that's one. But I also want to touch on the lessons learned, just maybe it would be useful for someone in the room. And that is definitely when you implement your lakehouse, make sure that you are using the medallion architecture to maximize the potential of a lakehouse. And secondly, do not forget, and I think as technologists we tend to, because we get too excited about moving on and starting new technology, that we forget about the people aspect of it. So I believe everyone kind of touched on it, and Bill mentioned that we can put a lot of data out there, but is everyone getting a value out of it? So even with modern data platforms, even if we get a lot of data accessibility and everything, are our users receptive to it? Are our users trained how to use those data platforms? And are they also along with us in that journey? So that's also very important, something we have learned as we were implementing from our phase 0, where we got pushback from our users in LA County to get their buy-in as we moved into phase 1. So we got them from engagement in phase 0 to excitement in phase 1 as we just change a little bit on our narrative to make sure that they're comfortable with it. So, yeah.
That's terrific. That's the hardest thing to do, is to get started. John, I'm going to ask you, what GenAI use cases are you most excited about and why?
Sure. So I would just say, let's do an and, so I don't have to repeat, because I think there's a lot of similarity in what we're approaching. I'll just add that the Secretary and the Governor both, you know, the Governor put out an executive order about a year ago this time, maybe a little bit later, addressing this, because I think it's that same feeling, right? We want to harness the best technology to serve our clients the best. And I don't want to say having said that, I want to say, and we need to protect their privacy. And I think there's a distinguishment between public sector and private sector. It's not about knowing the right things to do. It's about the political will and the negotiations that you have to go through to make these things happen. Even with consumer advocates who will come and say, you know, we get you're the chief data officer, but are you just going to let our data get out, right? Like, there's just this paranoia, scared, justifiably concerned, marginalized communities that have been impacted in negative ways when they've had to supply data in our history. And so we're just being really cautious of that. Where I'm optimistic is California, as well as other states and other municipalities, deal with open data. And so this data is already out there. We've already released it to the public. So there's mass amounts of open data. And so the thought, and we've been experimenting with Genie right now, right? Like, how do we take our current open data and turn it more into a talking interface? Because what I want to do is I want to take leadership that maybe aren't so tech savvy, but need answers to questions, and let them show them what's possible with a proof of concept. Let them deploy something similar in their own or work on a project together. But I think that will start getting folks thinking, oh, I don't have to go to my data department and get a report run. I can actually run this query myself using real language. And I think that's the thing that excited me. I'd say the second part is on the calls. If you think about the state of California and all the programs we run, there's a lot of call centers. There's a lot of people that are talking. That's a great, again, another known way that GenAI can really help focus workers on caring for the client and not necessarily taking notes during a call and things of that nature. So.
Terrific, thank you. And I've had a front row seat, I think, for all three of your data journeys, and I'm really proud and honored to be there. I want to wrap up with Bill, and I know Bill has a challenge. And looking 5 years out, I just think he's challenging and he has a challenge.
Yes,
but looking 5 years out, what do you see as the future of
So
AI?
I'll just say that, yes, we have to be cautious in government privacy, security, but let's not be too cautious. We are sitting on the precipice of the most amazing technology that I have ever seen in my career. And it is going to transform how we serve our residents and how we work. And we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should not be afraid of that. And if we don't start to experiment and move forward and get people comfortable with AI, then we're gonna lose out. And when we lose out in government, who suffers? The people we serve. So let's not be too afraid. Let's not be too afraid, because if we don't start to move forward and learn, we're gonna hurt the people that we serve. So I say it is going to be the most transformative technology we have ever seen. And let's be a part of that, right? Let's not have it done to us. Let's be a part of that.
Thank you. I have to say I'm so appreciative for your leadership. Really, it takes bold leadership to move these initiatives forward. And I'm sure all of you are here in the room because you're doing the same. So thank you. And I invite you to speak to our panelists at the upcoming reception. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. So next up, we have a session, fireside chat for a post-honeymoon. So it's going to focus on balancing AI outcomes with security, governance, and responsible AI. So Jennifer Storm from the U.S. Department of State, Center for Analytics, and then Omar Khawaja, our VP of Security and Field Chief Information Security Officer with Databricks, will be leading this conversation.
Okay. Got an excited room here. Guys excited? Kind of? Hey, look at this. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to this session. I've met I've met Jen before, but I purposely did not actually ask her to give me any of the answers to the questions. So I can be super curious, and we can all learn together from Jen and her experience. Jen's been at the Department of State for a while. I was thinking about this. The last person to speak on stage was Bill, and Bill was from Washington State. And now we're going to go to the State Department in Washington, D.C. Do you see that palindrome? Sad attempt at a dad joke here. But what was teed up by Majida and Bill and John before, they're talking about their aspirations, what they're hoping to get out of AI, and they kind of touched upon the fact that there are some challenges along the way. And I used to be a real CISO before I took on my current role, and so I was one of those pesky people that told the business what they can't do and why they can't do it, and sometimes scaring them, sometimes using more measured risk language. And so that's likely something that many of you deal with in your day-to-days as well. You have this great idea, you want to move it forward, you want to leverage modern technology, modern ways of working, and then things seem to come to a screeching halt. It almost feels like there's a tale of two cities going on in large organizations that have been around for a while, that have to do consequential work, that sort of feel committed to their mission, which all of you working in the government organizations that you're associated with likely can relate to. So I'm super excited to have Jen share with us what that tale of two cities sort of looks like at the Department of State. On the one hand, you have this excitement about everything that GenAI can do, what Bill talked about, how it's the most exciting technology he's ever worked on in his career. I hear people say that over and over again. How many of you feel similarly about AI? Okay, I think we may have some security people in the room. But on the other hand, the security people, the privacy people, the governance functions, legal, compliance, they've got a whole lot of reasons why they're not excited, and predominantly this is new to them. They don't really understand the world of data, and they don't really understand the world of AI, and they're afraid of the things that it may do that it wasn't intending to do. And so, Jen, you've had a career in data science. You've started and scaled nonprofits. You've been in the consulting world. You've been at Department of State for a while in their Center for Analytics, serving the State Department for their data needs. Why a career in data science of all the things you could do?
Absolutely. And first, I just want to share, I'm really excited to be here with everyone. One thing you said in your intro, which we'll talk about more as we go on, the Center for Analytics was established at the US Department of State, which is the oldest cabinet level agency. Wow. And so you can imagine that there's a lot of just historic institution process that often comes up against the new practices of data science.
And somehow,
the field.
Even though you've been around for 180 years or 280 years, you have no legacy tech. Is this true?
No
Absolutely.
legacy, zero
no
legacy,
no
nothing.
legacy tech. Somehow you solved that.
Exactly.
You solved that problem.
Yeah, all cutting edge.
We're going to talk about that in the next session and how they solved that.
Absolutely. But from a career in data science, to some extent, I started, my education background was in economics and data science. And then when I first started working in consulting and government, I worked in IT, and I worked in really traditional, what we thought of as systems integration, systems development, COTS product deployment. And then a couple of years ago, I got the chance to combine my background in data science and combine my background in more what had become more traditional IT, and got to start working at the Center for Analytics. Over the past couple of years, my predecessors had built up a system, which we call Data.State. That's our data and analytics platform at the department. And so I get to work really at the nexus of the infrastructure layer, the application layer, and then kind of that data strategy layer. So a little bit similar to the folks from Advana from what they shared. We have kind of a similar platform and a similar structure to really making data a part of the culture and a part of the operations at the department. So for me, it was really exciting to finally get to bring some of that college learning back into my day-to-day career, but then really still continue to work at that IT layer, which I have really come to love. I love those networking challenges, those infrastructure challenges, and I like to see them solved to help really address those mission needs.
Yeah, I love the enthusiasm. I think it was Secretary John Dulles, who was a Secretary of State back in maybe the 70s. He said, it's okay to have problems. It's just not okay to have the same problems you had 2 years ago. And I think that's what you're conveying. It's sort of the epitomizing that growth mindset of, yes, you're gonna have problems and you roll through them and you go on to the next thing and the next thing. And one of the things that we find is that, maybe I'll ask the group, what percentage of AI models actually get rolled into production? Anyone want to take a guess? 5. Where are the optimists in the room? 45. Okay, overshot. Too optimistic. 10%, right? 10% of models only make it into production. So on the one hand, we're super excited. We got the trained data. We trained the model. We built the model. We're ready to put it out there. And for whatever host of reasons, 90% of those models don't actually make it into the to production environment. What's going on? Like, what is it? And one of the reasons is the business looks at it and says, this isn't as exciting. This isn't serving a need. How do you prevent that from happening? How do you actually build that closer relationship with the mission?
Yeah, I think it's so challenging in so many layers because it's easy and fun and exciting to work in a development environment, and that's where you want a lot of your practitioners exploring, practicing, but to actually take a full system from development, to production is a significant amount of work, especially at a federal agency, because you're not thinking just about, does this thing actually work? Does it service customers? But then can I meet all of the legal, the security, the compliance mandates that go around it? And can I do that every single year? Can I not do it once just to get it authorized, but then can I continually go back and get it authorized every single year? So it takes a lot of determination and resilience to just bring a system all the way to production. And I think also going through that process, you'll find either what you thought was a really good use case or a really good solution in your development environment can't meet the standards in productions, or just the requirements are too at odds with each other. So I think mostly it's just like really going through that process. And the ones that do make it, I think, are the ones that have brought those different practitioners in early. So we work to build really strong relationships with our security, our governance, our legal, our compliance officers, so that their requirements get heard and get baked in early, so that by the time you go to production, it's not a surprise that there wasn't a bunch of 20 or 50 requirements that you weren't cognizant of, that you didn't know to build towards. So we take a lot of initiative for the ones that do go to production to make sure that those are built in early.
We're going to come back to that some more. I want to hear more about any tips and tricks on how you actually navigate those sort of wet blankets. And I can say that because I do security, so you guys can't say that about security people, but I can say it because you know how this stuff works. What I'm curious about is one of the things that you mentioned, Jen, is this idea of data-driven diplomacy. When I think of diplomacy, I think dark rooms, I think cigars, I think black leather chairs. I don't really think like data and tables and but it sounds like I need to probably get out more. What is data-driven diplomacy?
It still might be a little bit of the dark rooms and cigars, but more and more, we're finding that our field practitioners need data to conduct their mission, to conduct their operations, for those things that we do domestically here, stateside, to serve the rest of the field, to serve the rest of our diplomatic presence. We need data to be able to inform the decisions. So whether it's just pure management decisions that the State Department has to make to support its personnel, or if it's foreign policy decisions, our involvement in multilateral organizations, all of those things are really starting to require data. A good example recently is one of our climate leaders approached us of basically needing better tooling to be able to be participating in negotiations about climate the climate crisis, climate targets, and needing to be able to basically like dynamically put in inputs and then dynamically see different scenarios that would happen based off of those inputs. That went so far as we would have data scientists at the ready, kind of behind the scenes, who are able to support those deliberations, those negotiations, so that eventually when official was going to the table to conduct those negotiations, they had a robust set of data to support those negotiations, and they could see the different types of futures or the different types of outcomes that were possible by using data. So that's just one use case where a data scientist was basically actively supporting and data was actively being brought and aggregated so that they could have productive conversations about a topic that at surface may seem very much like a common cigars type conversation, but really needed to be supported by a robust set of data and informed by robust data.
Wow. I was reading something a few weeks ago, and it talked about how there's 4 different kinds of power. And the 4 different kinds of powers, one is coercive power, where you just have authority and you have a stick and you tell people to do it and they just do it, which sometimes the US has had, and the State Department probably gets to wield that often or occasionally. And then there is a reciprocal power. So tit for tat, I did something for you, you did something for me, so you negotiated. And then the third is this idea of emotive power. You listen to me because I'm charismatic, I made you feel a certain way. And then the fourth power is rational power. So rational power is I'm going to go to logic and I'm going to use data to make decisions. I'm curious, Jen, as you think about the tenure that you've had at Department of State, have you seen some of these powers sort of increase in frequency and usage and some of these decrease between the 4, the coercive power versus reciprocal versus emotive versus rational database power?
I think, in all different levels of negotiations, whether it's, just internal or even, broader external.
So for instance, with Putin, what do you guys use? Sorry, just kidding. Just not allowed to answer that.
So in all of these different scenarios, you're finding that the folks who are going into those conversations, again, whether it be an internal discussion or something larger, you're really looking to equip yourself with data. They'll ask a series of questions to make sure that they are equipped to have that conversation. And I think as many of the other folks can attest, sometimes those are questions you can very easily answer with data. Sometimes those are questions that require you to join 15 different data sets and sign multiple data sharing agreements. And it is a much larger endeavor than what you initially set out to do. But sometimes that is what you need to do to be able to answer that really critical mission question. So I do think we are seeing more and more a hunger for data in every type of conversation, no matter what type of negotiation structure ultimately gets used.
Yeah.
There are basically a hunger and a desire to make sure that you're equipped with information across the spectrum to be able to have those good conversations.
Wow, love it. One of the things that intrigued me is, Jen, your academic training is not just in data science, but it's also in managerial economics. I can't help but think that that's probably helped you get much of the success that you've had.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of a business economics degree, and I think as we were chatting before, the thing I took most away from economics was actually the game theory portions of economics, the negotiations, the how you work with other people. But from a macro perspective, I think economics is usually not people's favorite favorite topic in high school or college or wherever you first approached it. But ultimately, it is about the study of our communities and how people work, how communities work. And so there's a natural influx of data to be able to answer those types of questions. While I did not go down the track of being an economist, I am overjoyed that I still get to work with some of those principles and tenets in my day-to-day work.
Yeah, no, I love that, because on the one hand, we wish that data would rule the world. I think there's this adage that said, we trust in God and all others must bring data. Is it something like that? Right? And as much as we wish that was true, like, how often are decisions made in spite of what the data actually says, right? Do you guys come across that every now and then? Like, we have this sense of, if we have the data and we use it, then we'll guide ourselves to the best decisions. And sometimes in spite of that, we end up misusing the data. And there's a quote from, I think it's Richard Ogilvy, who's one of the founders of the whole this whole idea of advertising. And he said, some people use data like a drunkard uses a lamppost for support instead of illumination. Right? So when you have a lot of data, we know we can sometimes use the data and manipulate the data to tell the story that we want. And so what Jen is talking about, how you bookend that. So on the one hand, yes, you need to understand the data science, but on the other side, you also need to understand the human science. And economics and game theory is a lot about how things interact and how incentives and systems encourage or discourage people from behaving in certain ways and behaving in other ways. I'm curious, Jen, if you were to go back into a time machine, talk to the Jen Storm from 10 years ago, a younger version of yourself, what would you say, especially as you think about these, as the honeymoon period ends and we get past the uninformed optimism and we get to the informed pessimism and we think, oh my God, nothing's going to work. The last 7 models didn't make it into production. I feel like I should quit my job. This AI thing is stupid. I should just go back to doing something else. Maybe I could teach economics because I happen to know a lot about economics. But as you're sort of like going through all of those things, what are some of those things that with the power of the experience you've had, you tell your younger self when it comes to working with all of these functions that quote unquote are there to help you deploy AI and Gen AI in a responsible fashion?
Yeah, I think for a couple different themes there. There's been a couple projects that we've worked on that just ultimately failed in development, right? The business requirements and the security requirements were just fundamentally incompatible. There was no way that model was going to make it into production or that component was going to make it into production. And it was a really good test in dev. And then just never made it to production. And I think my younger self would have taken those a lot more seriously. I would have been a lot more demoralized. I would have been a lot more frustrated. And at the time, I think I was. But I think now having a couple successes of seeing either AI features or AI-oriented components move all the way to production, it is possible. It just takes a lot of time and negotiation. And so I think having that longer view has been helpful to me to know that when we are facing resistance or we are having those debates, that's part of the early creative process, right? To get this model to be the best it can be, those conversations have to happen, and it might cause you to change some of the features. So, for example, we're working on one application right now where we're using a large language model that's FedRAMP approved, FedRAMP authorized, but there's some components of that large language model that we've turned off because we haven't had full time to be able to assess and approve them, or we just haven't gone through all those layers of approval yet. So we're still able to work with that component in our development environment, and we're building a path to what we think is going to be productionalizing it. But there's some compromises we made of we need more time on this specific facet of this model. And so from taking that long view, it does take more time in government, but once you have a couple of wins, you realize that it is possible. You just have to, work with your security partners and invite them to the table more frequently.
Nice. Be persistent.
Yes.
Don't give up.
Absolutely.
So last week on Thursday, I happened to be in Menlo Park, New Jersey. Anyone know what Menlo Park, New Jersey is famous for? Light bulb. Thomas Edison's team invented the light bulb there. And how many tries did it take them? A lot, right? I think some say 100, some say 1,000, somewhere maybe in between there. And if you think about the role of people that build models, what do we call them? What is that position called? What are they called? They're called scientists. They're called data scientists, right? Of all of the engineering, or all the personas we have in the world of technology, the one persona that actually gets the moniker of scientist is the person that gets to build models. And maybe therein lies a clue that we're probably not going to get it right the first time. And we're going to have to iterate and do it over and over again, just as Jen said, and be persistent, sort of like that scientist that you're inquisitive, you're not willing to give up, you're stubborn, and you're going to keep at it until you find a way to to get it done and meet the requirements and get to the right outcomes. I think we do have a few minutes for questions. We don't have a few minutes. One question? One question? Okay. One question, make it really good. You can pick from one of two topics, North Korea or Russia. Just kidding. One question for Jen. Okay, we've got a question over here. Did anyone notice that we have Jen here talking about Gen AI? Yeah.
Get that joke a lot right now.
Do you get that?
I get that every week, yes.
I had a quick question on responsible AI approach and policy and how that's being worked or implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the federal government level, extremely important, extremely critical to the way that we work. So in October of 2023, the Biden administration released a really landmark executive order on responsible AI, which really gave all of the federal agencies a specific mandate around incorporating responsible AI principles into our work, at the development level, and really gave specific guidance around models that specifically, deal with human rights or safety impacting use cases, and then kind of reporting and governance that goes along with that. And we take that extremely seriously. So the responsible AI official sits within the Center for Analytics. They have stood up an entire governance mechanism to review things that are being developed and make sure that those principles are being, upheld across our work at the State Department, that they're being really infused as part of the governance process. It's not just one more thing to do, but it's really part of the process of how you get something fully to production. So taking it very seriously and really excited by the ways that we're able to bring our security and responsible AI practitioners into our work. The Center for Analytics, I suppose the last thing I would close with is we started as the chief data organization, and then like many of our peers, became the chief data and AI organization. And so really all of that AI work falls within our organization. And so it's critically important and one that we take very seriously, both in our work and for the whole department.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jen. This was
everyone.
awesome. A big round of applause for Jen. Thank you. This is awesome.
The next panel session is going to be on data modernization in the era of AI. So it's got Ethan Chen from FDA CEDAR. We have Brian Davis from Databricks moderating, and Joe Dioria from U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
It's always tough to be the session right after the break. You just hope people come back. So thank you. I do want to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Lisa Sion, who's running around. Thank you. Without Lisa's guidance and pulling together content and speakers, there would be no industry forum. And one of her tasks is to keep me in line. And so she sent me a Slack yesterday and said, make sure you print out the questions, which I read to mean don't go off script. So Lisa, I have my script. Unfortunately, Michael called in sick today, so he will not be participating. So I wanted to talk, we're going to talk today about data modernization in the era of GenAI. I would say that probably if you thought of government and modernization and innovation, those might be not the first three words that come to mind. But I hope to help dispel that rumor over the next 30 minutes or so. So I want to get started, let Joe and Ethan introduce themselves. So please introduce yourself, talk about your role within the agency and the work you've done with Databricks to this point. I'll start with you, Joe.
All right, thanks, Brian. Good afternoon, everybody. Name's Joe Daria from U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm the Director of Data and Analytics in the Product Engineering Service, which is really kind of the core nexus of product delivery on modern platforms in our Office of Information and Technology. Our marquee platform, if you will, our modernization target is the Summit Data Platform, which is a nexus of health data, benefits data, other administrative data sets, where we are instantiating modern governance, AI readiness, all the really exciting things that you've heard about so far today. I would like to say that VA is a large organization, over 450,000 employees. We're in the healthcare space, we're in the benefits delivery space, run cemeteries, right? There's a lot going on at this department. And one thing I will point out that one of my business partners here in the audience said to me during the break, our DOD friends and partners at Advana had a very interesting slide about their size and scale. And there was one thing that they did not lead in, and that was the number of doctors and healthcare facilities and patients served. And that would be our folks in VHA. So just shout out to them, only because some of them are in the audience and I want to get out of here alive. And then for everybody else that we've heard from this afternoon, in the public sector area, hey, thank you for your service, and thank you for all the veterans we have in the room for your service. Lastly, Databricks. We use it. It's okay. Yeah, 2 stars, Yelp. In all seriousness, Databricks really has been a great partner for us when we started using Azure Databricks. I want to say it's like 4+ years ago in my area, in the customer experience data warehouse. They really helped us bridge some feature gaps that we had with some other capabilities that were being rolled out into our government cloud at the time. And we learned about Databricks very quickly from that point forward, and all the wonderful things we could do with it. And when we get AI executive orders and we get a focus on AI and everybody's using ChatGPT, and I think about all the things that we were doing in the ML space for the last several years prior to that land rush and gold rush, whatever you want to call it, land grab. Databricks has been a huge part of that for us, and it's really been a catalyst for our team upskilling and preparing for what was going to be next in the realm of data management, analytics development, and ultimately the realm of generative AI. So happy to be here. Not 2 stars.
Some of you may recognize Ethan. He actually had a session on his program immediately prior to this, which is a reminder. All these sessions are recorded. So if you missed his session and you want to learn more specifically about what FDA is doing, I encourage you to go back and look at that. But Ethan.
Okay. Thank you. And for those of you who attended my early session, I'll repeat a little bit of what I said earlier about FDA. So I'm Ethan Chen. I'm a Division Director of Data Management Service and Solution under the Office of Business Informatics in CDER, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, which is one of the six centers under FDA, Food Drug Administration. So we're focused on human drugs and make sure the safe and effective drugs is available to American public. So that's our mission. And we're about 6,000 strong out of 15,000 people agency, nowhere compared to VA. But we believe we have an important mission that to support, equally important to support American public. So I joined FDA 2012, and there's a couple of things that happened in 2012. And number one thing is there is a GDUFA Act, Generic Drug User Fee Act, passed in 2012, and where we having a challenge as a nation that we want to make the drug affordable for American public, where we having a lot of challenges. Annually, we approve approximately 500 generic drugs at a time, while we also have over 1,000 applications in the backlog. So that's where we were before we have the GDUFA 1. The second thing happened is the Congress allowing FDA under the FDASIA 745AA to mandate electronic submission. So what does that mean? That means before we having this one allowing FDA to collect data electronically, FDA collect submissions in paper before 2012. That means when we today receive 400,000 submissions, imagine the amount of information we collect from paper. Each of the submission, especially the original one, is going to be shipped to FDA in trucks. Each of the submission has multiple copies. We use yellow jacket, blue jacket, green jacket. So we have a copy for records management in paper. We have a gigantic document room to hosting those paper jackets there. So that's where we are, 2012. So after 5 years, we enforced the mandate of all the submissions for NDA, ANDA, and the BLA, Biologic License application, in electronic format, and that's a mandate. And in 2018, we require commercial IND to be submitted in electronic copy. Today, we have about 99.97%, as I check, submissions are in electronic format, which means that will allow us to apply any of the modern technologies we see. In other words, without those, we're not data-driven decision-making agency. We're a paper-driven decision-making agency. So it's a huge difference that we're dealing with. So as a result of what we have today, and I just checked the number, we have approximately 950 generic applications being approved as of 2023. That's approved or tentative approved, which means we are making more affordable drugs available for American public. So that's important for us now. You go take a look how many drugs, how many copay you pay in your pharmacy. You probably would notice that, and then probably not, I don't know, right? So that's what we're doing here. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what we're dealing with, and that's the background, what data and why data is important to agencies like us.
Thank you, Ethan. So a similar question that was on the state and local panel, and it is, where are you on your data modernization journey, and what are the lessons learned that you can share with some of the folks that maybe aren't quite as far along as you? And I'll start with you, Ethan.
Okay. Well, now I just mentioned about the importance of data, right? So now I have to talk about the Databricks. So why Databricks? So you see, given the ability that we have electronic submitted data in a specific format that we see fit, then we start to looking at abilities for how we be able to leverage the data we collect electronically. So 5 years ago, we're looking our ability. Before 5 years, what we're doing there is we have all those silo systems in what we call the pre-market approved process, review process, to the post-market surveillance process. Each of them has multiple silo systems. People literally have to enter the data that they capture from the paper and enter those systems. They're all siloed. They did not talk to each other there. So the electronic data allow us to connect the information, otherwise they're not being able to connect to. In our data standard allow us to extract the information, how they being submitted to us, what we call the backbone file, how we connect to them together. So we started looking at the technical ability, how we be able to connect data there, how we're gonna be able to aggregate data, how we be able to drive the insight, otherwise reside in the individual silo system. So we look at the solution to start with the pre-market regulatory review process to supporting that particular operation. So certainly there's a choice of build or buy. I know everybody's dealing with that kind of situation there. And should we build ourselves and from ground up, there's lots of open source capability. Or should we buy? They are mature cost product will be able to offer you quite a bit, if not 100%, quite a bit of functionality that we're looking for. So we look into a system that be able to scale up, that's mature enough, that has adequate support, that also looking forward, not only being able to ingest the structured and unstructured data, but has a mindset to continue to deliver advanced analytical capability as a focus of the cloud-based enterprise architecture. So that's what we're looking for. And we compare a couple of products, offers a similar solution. That's why we decide to go with the Databricks, because we think that lakehouse concept is the one what we're looking for. But we also, in the same time, equally worry about We don't walk into a data swamp. At that time there, people will worry about what is the future of the data lake, right? So that's certainly something we worry about. And, but I think in 5 years, we're very happy about the choice we made at that time there. So today, I did mention in my early session, we do have 2/3 of the CDO users are utilizing the enterprise data platform that we established, the decision we made 5 years ago. We'd be able to having 14 different tenant spaces supporting different offices' needs, because they're very diverse type of review process that they're conducting across the life cycle of our review operation. And we're also having 50 data sources being ingested, internal FDA as well as external FDA. It's nowhere compared to DOT 500 data sources. That's a lot to us there. We're not in that scale, but I mean, that's what we have. We have about 70 use cases that we support as of today. So we are able to having one, what we call the one-stop shop systems that allowing our review to be able to connect various information no matter where the original data is reside to, then the information is readily available in front of the sky. And I think it is important in a sense that what we're seeing, what we are able to achieve, because in some of our review community, the KPI in their eyes to the IT system is measured about by the amount of click they do to access the information they need. So that's what we're dealing with. And so I think there's quite a bit a journey that we went through by adopting the system, by adding additional capability. I would say we're not quite there. We only connected the information together. There's a lot more things that we need to do.
So I think where we are in our journey is we've realized that we've gone through a lot of side quests to get where we were going. And by that I mean when we look at the scale and coverage of VA, just in the healthcare side of it with corporate data warehouse, CDW, roughly 7,000 workgroup databases. We've got 16 petabytes of online storage from the SAN supporting it, 700 plus SQL servers, 10,000 SQL writers. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because it's big, it's immense, it's scale. So how do you collapse that into something that's modern, cloud native? It doesn't move data around for performance reasons, right? So you've heard a lot about medallion architecture. You've heard a lot about the data lakehouse from other folks today, but we standardized on that concept architecturally because we wanted to bring compute to the data. We didn't want to reproduce data assets in multiple locations for performance reasons. We wanted it modern tooling. We wanted people to be able to use things like Databricks if they wanted to. We wanted people to be able to throw SQL at Synapse, and that's why we have that as an addition on top of Databricks so people can get to a more traditional look and feel. And then we realized we had all these wonderful tools. We had to stitch them together in the data product concept. So in Summit, we built the Summit UI, which allows us to stitch together all the third-party tools that we have available to us to build this. So where are we now, right? We're realizing that we're going to modernize CDW to Summit. We've got pockets of other work streams and data silos that will be migrating to that platform. But we are also building a fair amount of capability in what I like to call federated governance and administration, right? What does that mean? Well, we've got a data catalog, of course. You've heard a lot about that today. But understanding where data lives, what it represents, what business process it connects to is the most important part of what you're going to do in modernizing your data processes. And then building from there, how do you connect that, right, with other silos? How do you enforce federated governance? Well, you start picking tools that are best of breed that tackle things like attribute-based access control for you. Things like we're using Starburst to even connect our legacy on-prem systems up to Summit, right, so that we can federate queries across those platforms. So we're doing all of these things not because we necessarily want to reinforce the usage of these older platforms, but we want to ease the transition, right? While we teach people how to use modern tooling, keep them where they are, keep them productive, right? If we don't have analysts, if we don't have field practitioners, I mean, we have nurses that run SQL queries against CDW today to support hospital operations, right? If we don't have a close analog for that user experience, right? And give them a journey, not to overuse that word, to the new platforms and to the new ways of working, then we're hurting veterans, right? We're hurting patient care, we're hurting claims determination and administration. We can't do that, right? So we have to balance these step functions of progress with ensuring that you still have something that people can look at and understand and say, hey, I know what that is, I know how to deal with that. And so those 10,000 people that come off the CDW from a SQL writer experience aren't saying, I don't know what to do with this Jupyter notebook, right? Because that's what they say, literally. Did you see Dr. Scott's nodding knowingly? He's like, I don't know. I've been working on this for 5 years. I'm still not entirely clear. Is that with a Y? Anyway, so to give him a hard time, I always call him out in every one of these things, makes him feel loved. Anyway, so where are we? We're ensuring that we get the governance right. We don't want to make bad decisions quicker. We don't want to make decisions that we don't understand. So data management was where we started. Data management is where you will be on every day in your AI journey, especially as you get to generative AI. And that's the message I take home. Get the stuff you've been trying to do right for 5 or 10 years, get it right. Because if you're going to move into the next phase without nailing that down, you're creating a mountain of technical debt that you will never possibly be able to climb. And you're going to set up the person who's going to do your job in a decade. They'll be cursing your name. There's some people's names I won't utter to this day who maybe might have worked at VA. I'm just kidding. Anyway. Hope that sums it up for you.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of speaking of the next step in the evolution, right? So you've got a modern data strategy built on the lake house formation, you've layered on governance and security, and now here comes Gen AI. So, just generally speaking, what do you see as some of the most promising use cases for Gen AI in the VA? I'll start with you, Joe.
So if you look at what our partners in the CTO shop are working on today, in building out a governance framework and an evaluation guidelines for responsible AI, many of the things that they're looking at aren't necessarily, hey, can we throw an LLM at something? Or can we generate something quicker? Can we collectively get to knowledge, right? What they're really looking at is how do we make end users' lives better with AI? How do we get ambient scribes in the exam room with clinicians so that TIU, or we call them TIU encounter notes, clinical notes, you've heard that talked about a couple times, I think, if I remember correctly today. How do we get those generated quickly, more accurately, and how can we summarize them? How can we extract clinical concepts from them without a doctor having to look at that? There's pilots around that going on. I think focusing on not just what can we do with the data estate that we have or with generative AI, but what can we do with the business processes that are out where we're serving veterans? How can we assist that? And I think the other thing that we're really going to find when we get serious about employing some of these concepts, we've got a RAG pilot running on Summit today. My AI lead, Joe Bertano, is driving. And it's very similar to what you heard, I believe it was from LA County, in terms of we've taken all of VA's policy documents and publications and putting something out there that we can start asking questions, conversationally find out, am I allowed to do this? How do I do this? Just as an example for our ML AI Center of Excellence to say, hey, we did this once, this is how we did it, these are the tools we used, these are the governance steps that we took to get there to ensure that the answers were accurate or at least representative. And using that as a teaching mechanism, right? These very benign use cases that make people's lives easier and becomes a teachable moment for people who are only used to, getting ChatGPT to produce song lyrics in the style of Britney Spears. So that's where you gotta take people out of that mindset and say, we're going to take VA's collective knowledge with what you know, and we're gonna do it responsibly, right? So we're not retraining models every 6 weeks and burning CPU cycles, GPU cycles on that. Because at the end of the day, we're accountable for the dollars we spend. So as we start to bring these to bear, and that's probably a common theme you've heard today in public sector, if we bring these to bear, we will do so in such a way that is responsible, ethical, and governable.
Thank you. Well, on our side there, and as you know, we have a speaker tomorrow, right? Is going to talk about what the hardware will be able to enable the capability that we envision. I would say ever since OpenAI announced open its door for everybody to try, there's a high hope. So what FDA is not lack of is a scientist. And what scientists like to do is exploring possibilities. So we definitely have lots of needs, and the needs are mushrooming, and that we're kind of trying our best, try to be able to find a way that'll be able to support them, especially try to creating an enterprise capability that will be able to support them instead of individually that what we need to do. So that's a challenge that we have in an enterprise level, what we need to be able to do. That also, we also in the same time recognize there's no data model is perfect for every operations that you do. And we will need to have different models there. And we will need to have a platform that will allow us that first have the data as a base available for us to run the model and feeding the information to do the refinement, to be able to derive the insight to support their operation. Two, you will need to have enough resources that be able to sustain the computational needs of processing such data. And so we know the hope is very high, and we know the resource demand is substantial, and to a point there, if we want to achieve and fulfilling all those needs, it's almost impossible for us to do. Now, further, when we attended Mosaic AI yesterday, it's even more scary and saying for the amount of resources you dedicate into that, it's not guaranteed successful. Right? I mean, we all know, we kind of come down as a practitioner, we come down to this floor there, we are the one gonna make it reality. And that reality is not always rosy, and we're gonna be the one to make it happen there. What are the ones that will be able to make it more convincing and promising to support our operation? It is a big question. So I'm saying that there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of challenges, but we think having a platform that be able to support, build up enterprise capabilities is important one. We have a framework, but we still have a lot of work to do.
So we're going to get the buzzer here in just a second, but I just want to get you out of here on one last question. So short answer. We are at the Data and AI Summit. Obviously, this industry forum is everyone's highlight of the week, but we still have 2 more days. So what are you most interested in? What session, what capability are you most interested in learning about over the next 2 days? I'll start with you, Ethan.
I think I'm here to learn from others, from everybody's experience and practice to see how we be able to bring back to our environment to support what we need to do for our mission.
Yeah, very similar, right? There's a lot of great sessions tomorrow and Thursday that I'm signed up for that I can't wait to hear what other people are doing. And maybe one day I'll get to do some of those things in some of our environments as we work with our partners to speed access to the latest things that everybody's going to see this week in our Azure environment.
All right, really appreciate it. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jude. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure. Brian, good job, man. Alrighty. So for our next speaker, our next session will be with USCIS. So it will actually be Customs and Immigration Service. They were actually one of the first federal customers for Databricks. Actually have become one of our largest customers and actually did one of the largest PVC to E2 migrations, have one of the largest Unity catalog instantiations currently in the company. So I think this should be a great session. So Shawn, Puru, welcome to the stage. Yeah, there we go.
Excellent.
Thank you.
25 minutes. Sweet.
All right. Hey everybody, my name is Shawn Benjamin. I'm currently acting as the Deputy Chief of Systems Delivery, but in my longtime role, I've been with the Data and Business Intelligence Services at USCIS. I've been with them since 2007. This project, I've seen it go from an egg to a chicken to a flock of birds. it's been my life's project, and it's not over. It's still growing. And I have Purushotam with me today. He is our lead architect and engineer of pretty much everything Databricks. He is the man that works all hours of the day, bringing this capability to us and all of our users. All right, we're from USCIS, so Customs and Immigration. A lot of times we just say we're from immigration, right? So what that really means for us is, we're visas, naturalizations, work permits, visitors. That's what we're working on. That's our mission. And here I'm showing, these are our director's priorities, which line up great with the capability we can give her. We really treat data as a product in our agency. We're about 15,000 users of the data in whole of our ecosystem. And we do make data-driven decisions. Listening to everybody speak today was so amazing because we all do share literally the same challenges, little different flavors here and there, but it's all the same use cases. And I'm gonna really center my presentation and Puru's presentation around not where we've come from to this day, but really from about 2 years ago when Unity Catalog was first mentioned to me, and I said, I want that. We've been chasing that forever. So our first half of our presentation is really gonna talk about what are the business cases, what are we bringing to our business users, what are we bringing to ourselves? Yeah, we're gonna be selfish in this. Like I said, Unity Catalog, once I heard that term and saw what that product could do, I wanted it. And Puru, I talk to him every day saying, hey, we need this and we need this now. I was like, well, how are we gonna get this? Gotta go to E2, Shawn. And then, what my long-term vision is, it's not just my long-term vision, it's our shared long-term vision with using data as a product. And I'm gonna hand it over to Puru, and he's actually the guy that you really wanna hear from. He was in the trenches, a lot of late hours, a lot of long weekends and holidays, bringing this capability to us. So yeah, right away, starting off, I had to bring the users, right? I got to convince the users, hey, we're going to do another migration. I've already got all of you guys in Databricks, PBC. We brought you a lot of capability. But one of the things that we really wanted to show them is like, hey, every time there's a product drop, we can't get it because we're in PBC. So the only way we're going to get these new product drops and be in that testing, working with Databricks, as soon as something goes to like in a beta, we can start testing it and start playing in our own sandboxes, bringing our users right in. We are very much partnerships with our users, primarily the Chief Data Office, which does not sit in OIT at our agency, by the way. It's independent, it's third party, it's a great relationship that way. I suggest everybody set up their Chief Data Office that way. Delta sharing, we already done it. We have some friends here from CBP where we created what my version of data mesh is. And that's connecting my agency's data lake to other agencies' data lakes. And we've done that through Delta Share. That's live in production. We actually had a use case the other day. We had to bring some more data tables in because we built that pipeline. Pru, it took how many minutes to bring that data in?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Whole new data set. Going to CBP. The people who were part of it, though, it probably took about 2 weeks for them to agree on letting us push the button. Delta Live tables. SQL Warehouse, we currently have a fairly substantial implementation of OBIE. Had that in our space since 2007. About 2,000 users left on it now. At one point in time, 8,000. I see SQL Warehouse is our way to helping us sunset that product, which I did announce this year on April 1st to 5,000 users. I'm getting rid of OBIE. And they thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. Made sure April 1st was a perfect day, Friday afternoon, go home for the weekend, come back to Monday full of emails. And obviously Unity Catalog, we've been chasing that, we're all chasing that. We don't know anything about our data. We have 169 data sources. And for us, we count data source as like full ATO system. And we just wanna know how people are using the data. We wanna know who's using the data. We have our fraud and national detection systems. They want to know who's using their data. They're building reports like, how is our data being used by other people? That's why Unity Catalog has been so huge for me. And data dictionaries, it's not like a full data dictionary, but it's going to give us a lot of capability. I'm going to probably be the only person to not talk about GenAI today. Thank you. Everybody else covered that for me. And obviously governance and lineage, that's where that lineage is huge. We build a lot of downstream products. We have a couple large data marts. We're going to be able to watch that data travel all the way through. We're going to be able to find out how many versions of first names we have in all of our systems. So we can start working on the data governance. If Omar's still kicking us around, his wife works for the Chief Data Officer. And she works a lot with us on data governance and data management. And obviously cost efficiency. Everybody is always telling us, like, Shawn, how much is this gonna cost us? And what does it look like? And for me, the price of this data, this is the price of admission, right? To have your data fast, timely, quality, because we really see our return on investment in actually our users' time because of that good data. We reduced our backlog at USCIS this past year for the first time in like 5 or 6 years by 15%, which was a big deal. Our director runs around and tells everybody. We want to know why? Because our director uses a dashboard that points to the same data everybody looks at. You can't argue with that. If the director's looking at that data, y'all better be looking at it too. And we do. Again, very data-driven. And I'm going to, I see this is really for me, right? When I talk to the business, like, all right, they don't know what a DBU is. It's so hard to explain a DBU to a business user. They're like, what's my per seat license? No, it doesn't work that way. The more you play, the more you pay. And you have this conversation. I'm going to be able to show them that. And it really helps us to tune our jobs. It helps them to become, again, partners in that data to help build that data product. It's not come to IT and ask us to build something for you. It's come to IT and ask us to help you build something. We're gonna get you moving and you're gonna do it yourself. And then you can come and talk with us and we'll help you along the way. All right, so that was the business case. Now, selfishly, here's my case, right? I wanna get out of that administration mode. I don't need Puru working at 2 o'clock on Christmas Eve. He will anyway. But I wanna at least have some peace of mind on my side. We're gonna take that maintenance, give it all to Databricks. Huge advantage. We're moving as much of our products as we can into a software as a service model. Obviously working with our security and everybody else to get that approved. The reliable, efficient operations, proactive monitoring, that's where our job comes. We decided we needed to be more platform-based. In the early days, we were kind of experts in the data because we could see all the data, we could crosswalk it, we could translate it. Once we brought in a CDO shop, they started working on more data governance for us. They became the intermediate, with the business and us and helping them to understand the data. We really took a heavy platform approach. And part of that big, heavy platform approach is that proactive monitoring. And then obviously the resource optimizations. And a big thing on the bottom there, Unity Catalog has been my silver bullet at USCIS to supporting our zero trust initiatives. That I've been working hand in hand to work with our security teams, bringing this product in. They've been actually helping us to support Databricks financially through zero trust initiatives because, like I said, it works for our business users, it works for our security users, and we're definitely seeing major advantages of that. 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to be giving a couple of presentations on the benefits of Unity Catalog for zero trust, and we can do that because Puru just helped us get into Unity Catalog. He'll be telling you about that later. Oh, too many. All right, the long-term vision, obviously that future-proofing. I got a chance to see a session on Unity Catalog managed tables today, and I'm like, that's it, yeah, this is what we want. Yeah, now I can get this because as soon as it's available to us, we can start implementing it. And Puru is already like, all right, let's start some small test cases. And you know what, by the way, any new data set we bring in, let's make it a managed table right away. So that way we can start working on the technical debt plan to get everything that we already have that's not a managed table, an unmanaged table, right? That's the right way to say it. Over to being managed, but anything new will be ready and managed right away. And again, that perfect teaming, obviously, with Unity Catalog. Of course, I said I wasn't going to talk about AI, ML, or GenAI, but we obviously know the advantages there that we're going to get being in E2. There's no more waiting game. We're pretty fast at USCIS, pretty progressive. And I thought we were very fast even in the PVC, but boy, we're going to be way faster now because those product jobs, they're mine. And then I can do what I do, sell the business on these great ideas. Puru can do what he does, help implement these great ideas. And the alignment of organizational goals and optimizing data sharing. You heard me talk about Delta Share. One of the big things, doing that Delta Share for that what I'm calling the data mesh on our side, it's more of infrastructure data mesh, working with other agencies. Jennifer from Department of State, where are you? Like all these folks that we want to share data with, there she is. That's part of our tool and that's our thing. But we need to start using it more internally. We need to start using Delta Share to broker that data between our Tableau instances, which carries the most of our users. And Tableau and Databricks for us is pretty much peanut butter and jelly. You're probably having accounts in both places, building a product, visualizing it. And as well as connecting to our SaaS instances, we have SaaS and connecting to all of our other Oracle interfaces. We're really going to start taking advantage of the Delta Share because we're going to have time now. We're not going to be managing our systems late at night. We're going to be actually building products and engineering. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Puru. This is actually the guy you want to see, not me. I talk to the executives. I mean, he's the real Batman. I don't know what I am. Probably more like the Joker. So go ahead, Puru. I'll get you started.
Thank you, Shawn. Hi, I'm Puru Shrestha. I've been supporting USCIS for last 9 years. I'm from the contracting side of the house and currently IBM employee. To align with the USCIS vision of adopting emerging technologies, improve architectural efficiency, data governance, and zero trust implementation, we took a measure initiative of migrating our Databricks environment to Databricks environment. This environment, as Shawn mentioned, he wants a unit catalog. To get there, we have to first migrate our PVC to E2 environment and subsequently to the E2 environment, the unit catalog. So with that in mind, we also wanted to minimize as much as to user community as seamless as possible. So this is a strategy we have used, and this is the different strategy stages. As you can see, most important stages is the UAT stage. So we were able to, if you look at this diagram, it's like similar to a blue-green approach. So we could do a dry run up until UAT stage to find if there is any errors, if there is any issue, and find out if there is any user impact. So we are able to identify those with this approach. And we could do multiple dry run to as seamless as possible. This is the most important stage of our migration process for E2 environment. This is a high level, as Shawn mentioned, he wants a Unity catalog. To get there, we started in 2022. At that time, it was not even FedRAMP. We began analyzing our environment with the help of Databricks. So when we started, we had at that point 67,000 Hive tables. We have roughly 1,200 jobs workflow. We have 65 databases connected by SaaS. We have a 12 subject area appointed by Smart, OBIE, we call it Smart, OBIE. We have over 3,000 data sources connected by Tableau. So there was a lot of, our environment was first, we have been in Databricks PVC since 2017. So we have already a lot of objects already in the PVC environment. And this, so we always have in mind, we're gonna be seamless as possible for user community. So that's why we, in that previous slide, UAT stage was very important stage for us to understand what are the issues we might face and what are the impact user may have. In this, I will highlight a couple of there are so many challenges, but I wanted to highlight a couple of those. One is at the same time, we are in the AWS, our cloud provider is AWS. So we wanted to have a control plane connect to a Databricks AWS account. We wanted to have this communication to go through a private link, which we have created a VPC endpoint, which basically our user web application to connect use this VPC endpoint plus REST API and secure cluster connection. So we don't want any of our traffic to go through a public internet. So that was the one challenge we face in our environment, but we're able to connect those with the help of Databricks plus our USCIS networking as well as different stakeholder, DNS team, proxies, and things like that. Second challenge is when in the PBC environment, we use Databricks DHS, the DHS CA4 certificate and load balancing in our account. Now, when we migrate, we have to use .cloud.databricks.com, which is a different URL. That alone impacted all the user community. As you can think, like all the user community, now they are need to connect a new URL. All the downstream app, all the user base, everyone is impacted. So we have to come up with a lot of user training, a lot of communications, everything. So we're lifting and shifting to entirely new system. All said and done, we are able to migrate. These are the timeline. It took a while, but we were able to achieve. We have 5 different environment in our account, and we are able to achieve last year before the Databricks AI Summit. So I would like to highlight few of the, once we migrated to E2 environment, there are few I like to highlight. One is, as Shawn mentioned, maintenance. We have a 5 environment. Whenever we have a PBC upgrade to a new version, it takes a lot of time, and there are sometimes we are ended up errors and things like that, and we have a lot of support tickets and things like that. So our time was spent on a lot of maintaining those PBC environment. As soon as we migrated to the E2 environment, there's no maintenance. We didn't have to spend those time. We didn't have to deal with the opening support ticket. So all those time, we're able to dedicate to something else, on some other product. So we didn't have to worry for a lot of things. Our support ticket went down drastically once we migrated to E2 environment. Another thing is we have seen machine learning experiment, model training, and registering those models by our user community. So they are really taking advantage of those AutoML and all those things. Databricks SQL is another one. We're able to utilize Databricks SQL, as Shawn mentioned. We wanted to our user base to sunset some of the old legacy application, utilize DB SQL. We're also able to utilize this DB SQL for a lot of JDBC, ODBC connection, as well as some other use case, API, things like that. So that was the highlight. So we didn't have that flexibility in PBC. Now we have all those new features. I just wanted to highlight a few of those. I don't want it to, you all already know about all the features. Challenge phases, I already went over. Data integrity, all this we are able to do in a UAT stage on the previous slide. Downtown management, so we learn everything while doing the dry run up until the UAT stage. So we were able to minimize downtime. So we just took 1 weekend to migrate our production workflow. So we took the long weekend. That's why Shawn always said so we are able to do a robust testing, all those things in the UAT stage. So once we migrate everything, then right after that, we start thinking of migrating to Unity Catalog. We took same approach like this one. We did exact same thing, Unity Catalog, same approach. We have different stages, and we are doing similar to blue-green approach. So we started right after our E2 migration, 2 or 3 months later, we started our migration. And there are a few challenges. For example, when we come from the legacy environment, PBC environment to E2, one of the biggest challenges was the share access mode versus single access mode. cluster. Lot of functions and things like that are not supported in a shared access mode, whereas we are in the single access mode. But because of we have those stages and we're able to identify all the problem we may face in a UAT stage, and we do have a workaround. So any mission critical, we know how we can solve those. Some of the issue is like our language is not supported in the share access mode. Machine learning is another one. There are some Py4j security issues and things like that. So those are supported in single access mode, but not supported on the share access mode. That was one of the biggest issues we faced. I think once we have a workaround solution, we're able to deliver those. Another issue is like a volume. In the E2, before we migrating to the Unity catalog, we are not able to create volume and deploy. So we have to first migrate to the Unity catalog, then utilize the volume. So that was another challenge, but we knew like that's the way we have to go. So we are able to overcome all those challenges and successfully migrate to Unity catalog. This is the third week we successfully migrated to the Unity catalog. I just wanted to highlight few like the benefits of after migrating Unity catalog. As Shawn mentioned, like we have a requirement to share the data to the external agency, CBP, and as soon as the requirement came, we are able to deliver because of we have the Delta share in Unity catalog. Within the 5 minutes, we're able to share those data to the external agency. So this really makes, prior to that one, we had open source, we did have a Delta share, open source Delta share, but that initiative will take at least one sprint, which is a couple of weeks, to
we traded 2 weeks for 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So that's one, as soon as. Second, another, as Shawn mentioned, lineage. We're able to now see a lineage on, okay, this is the upstream and this is the downstream. And all those lineages we're able to see that's capability we didn't have prior to a Unity catalog implementation. Third is data governance. Every single object in the Unity catalog is access control. And it can be an ANSI SQL statement grant to blah, blah, blah to your principal, whether it's a user or service principal or groups. So every single is access control, and it's easy to implement those. So that's one of the challenges we didn't have, we had before migrating to a Unity catalog.
All right, we're getting hooked. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Some amazing customer stories. I think as excited as we are about the announcements and the exciting progress in the field of AI, I think the most value users get is talking to other users. And CIS has certainly been generous in sharing their lessons learned. We know we've got a few other customers on the cusp of migration with FedRAMP High and IL6. Use them, they're incredibly generous. They've had great experience and they've just been a marquee adopter of Unity. I'm excited to announce public sector awards. I get to come up for the fun stuff. My name's Jude Boyle, along with Sujit Mohanty. We get to lead the public sector business. Questions and answers. So I think first up is the winner of our PubSec Partner of the Year. Deloitte GPS has been involved on numerous strategic projects across state and local, Fed, DOD. They've been taking complex technical challenges and delivering mission and citizen impact. And we're grateful for your help. For the Deloitte team in the room, would you stand up and be recognized? And partnership is so critical. I mean, in our sector, maybe more than others. We're all aligned, we're all working together. And Deloitte's been fantastic that way. Really making some investments. We have a few finalists today for the Data Team Awards, and those are going to be announced at the session this evening. They'll be celebrated this evening. So please, if you're there, make a point. I feel like we've got some good news maybe coming. I feel a little bit lucky about this board right here. Let me tell you a little bit about what they've accomplished this year. So Advana is the DOD enterprise-wide Center for Data, AI. It's a multi-domain analytic and artificial intelligence platform. As part of the Chief Digital and AI Office, CDAO, Advana hosts dozens of business lines such as logistics, financial management, supply chain management, people, and health. Advana puts the power of data, analytics, and AI in the pocket of every DoD analyst and decision maker. The platform makes data decisions accessible, understandable, and useful to leaders, analysts, and mission owners. We also have another great story, the LA County Auditor and Controller. They collapsed 40 different systems across departments, adopted secure, scalable lakehouse architecture, increasing data insight and democratizing access. They centralized data repositories, built robust visualizations for executive decision-making and streamlined development of analytic tools. This enabled real-time annual statistic reporting, vendor payment reporting, as well as comprehensive budget and expense reporting that previously required extensive manual efforts and time. So real excited, obviously, about both of those stories. There were other great stories that we wanted to share and celebrate. Some of our government customers have ethics limitations about where they can publicize and share, and we all want to be responsible toward those. But for those in the audience, I thank you. Building something's not easy, and a lot of you guys have the scar tissue to show. But come, if you can, to the Data Team Awards. We're going to recognize some recipients tonight. We do get to recognize, though, a public sector data transformation awardee. And I'm excited to announce the recipient of that, the 2024 Industry Transformation winner, the Advana team. The Advana team, you guys stand up. Come up, actually. Damn it, I want a picture with you. Where are you? Okay, come on. Cody, Alex. Yes. Thank you so much, Brad. We've got a few other folks. Advana is a mission that touches a lot of different programs and has just been a great adoption area for the Department of Defense developing AI. And they were very generous sharing their insights today. Please, one more time for the Advana team. Now I realize I'm separating you from happy hour, and you're probably ready for a drink. We have them downstairs. Oh, first, we have some amazing sponsors. AWS, who's sponsoring the event. You guys are welcome to step, or you're welcome to have a drink with me. We'll see y'all down there. We'll meet you at the bar. Thank you, guys. AWS and Carahsoft were two of our title sponsors. We also have Deloitte, who's one of our platinum sponsors. Booz Allen and Accenture Federal Services were our premium sponsors. I probably got the terms wrong, but the information radiator doesn't have it, so you don't know. You know, Aaron had once told me early in the process, our leader of Fed, like, you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you do it with partners. And so we're deeply grateful for the partners who have helped us. You heard a lot of their stories today on stage with CDAO, with CIS, with VA, and that partnership is critical. So we want to thank you. We particularly want to thank AWS and Carahsoft for sponsoring the happy hour, which is going to be in the industry forum area. We provide you a map. We try and make this simple. That's us. Head to the Moscone Expo Hall. This is starting at 4:40, so I'm not quite separating you from a drink, but I will be in about a minute. We'll see you downstairs. One of the most important things about this event is a chance to speak with other users, to share their best practices and to benefit from their learnings. You got a chance to hear some great stories today. There are other great stories I see in this audience. Please make time to get a drink, to share best practices, and we'll see you throughout this week. Special thanks for Suj and Lisa, who put together a lot of this. Thank you very much, guys.